Well guys, it has been just about a year since I bought this Honda Prelude down in Tennessee. Brought it back up here to Massachusetts. I've learned a lot, and there's some stuff that if you guys are looking to buy a Honda Prelude, and I think this even applies to all old Hondas, some things to look out for, some things that I didn't know I was gonna be expecting or should have expected once I had the car, but we're gonna get into that. Just a quick background, if you guys are new to the channel, this is my 1988 Honda Prelude. It is the S model, it's got the dual carb, it's an automatic. Before you say, why didn't you get a manual? It only has 68,000 original miles on it. When I picked it up, it had 62,000. So just keep that in mind. Let's get into some reasons or some things to look out for when you're looking to buy an older Honda Prelude. For anybody who's just learning, the third gen Honda Prelude that you see here ranges from years 1988 to 1992. There was a mid-series facelift, so 88 and 89 models are a little bit different and have a different front bumper, and the taillights are different than the 90 to 92 model. One thing that a lot of guys, at least from what I've been reading on the forums, actually prefer the front bumper on the 88 to 89 model like you see on mine, but they don't like the taillights. So the 88 to 89 cars have the orange taillights that you see there, or orange and red, the combination, and the 90 to 92 Honda Preludes actually have a more clearish red looking taillight. It's a different taillight altogether. I didn't actually know that the taillights differed between the years, so I figured once I had found out that they did differ, I saw the later model ones and I liked them a lot. You can't actually switch them easily into this model. So if you have an 88 or 89, you can't necessarily just drop in 90 through 92 taillights. It's a little different. The mounting brackets are a little different, and the cords, I believe, the plugins for the car are a little different. Another thing to look at is the motor. So I did not know a whole lot about these cars when I was first buying them, or buying this one. I found out that it does have the dual carb motor. I'll go ahead and pop the hood for you. Here is a quick look at the dual carb S model motor. So it is the B20A3, I believe, or no, B20A, I forget, guys. You guys can quote me or correct me on this, but it's the dual carb. So you have one carb here and the other one right there. So it is differing than the fuel injected SI version, which is fuel injected and obviously has no carbs. Now, if you're thinking about picking up a Prelude and maybe you found a dual carb one, keep in mind that there is really limited to basically nothing you can do to this motor to really increase it horsepower wise. I'm sure you could do some tuning, but as far as bolt-ons and any sort of modifications to the block itself, you're pretty limited. I know on the fuel injected side, if you have an SI motor, you know, you might have VTEC, you may also, well, you'll have a fuel injected motor, so you can do things like a cold air intake and it will actually make a difference. You can do things like a tune, and you know, there's just more you can do with that. You can add a turbo, you can do all sorts of stuff. So reason being is now I've got this slow motor, and now I'm at the point where it's got low enough mileage that I want to ride this motor out. I want to just let it live its days, and once it finally dies or gets to a point where it's going to be more money to fix than it makes sense to just replace it, then I'll go ahead and look into doing an engine swap and putting for sure a fuel injected motor into this. Definitely one that is also turboed. Before I go ahead and actually shut the engine hood, you can see here I've changed the timing belt, the serpentine belt, and those are really crucial, especially on either engine, you know, dual carb or fuel injected. Make sure that these look good. If they look frayed or just weathered, then you're gonna need to do a timing belt change, and that's a pretty penny in itself unless you plan on doing the labor on your own. Another thing to look out for if you're buying one of these is the headlights. Mine, I lucked out. Mine actually work very well. Mine actually work very well. The motors I haven't really had any issues with. So as you can see, they do go up and back down, which I had before. So definitely something you want to double check when you're doing this. Make sure they look even and they're not, you know, one's not like lower than the other one and all that good stuff, because adjusting the motor behind these, and if things break, it's very, very hard to fix and very hard to find the parts for it. And that kind of leads me into my next point is, do not expect parts to be easily attainable for these cars. It is a challenge to find anything and everything for the third gen Honda Preludes. Your best bet is going to be finding used part cars or part out cars, it's kind of the same thing. I found some stuff on like Rock Auto that's more of a generic general type of part. So like I had to replace the fuel filter. That was easy. That's a very generic part. But if you were to do something like upper control arms, or if you needed like new shocks, or you wanted to do OEM shocks and springs on this, you're gonna have a hard time finding the parts. And if you do, it's probably gonna be off a high mileage Prelude just because of the year. And don't use mine as an example necessarily. Again, when I bought it, it only had 62,000 miles, which is very rare for these. I would say most of the ones I've seen since I've bought this car range anywhere between 100 to 250,000 miles. So even if you're picking up a part out car, or you're buying parts off a part out car, you may be running into very, very, very used parts, which again just goes back to the challenge of finding replacement parts for these cars. It is not as easy as you would think. Just because it's a Honda doesn't mean they still have them in stock. One thing I cannot say enough about this car is how easy it is to work on though. When you are working on parts and you're not looking to find and relocate or locate new parts, like for example, when I put in the coilovers, the whole process was very easy. Working on this car is pretty simple. It's actually astonishing to me how many times I go to work on this car and find out that all I need to do what I'm trying to do is grab a Phillips head screwdriver. There's just so much on these cars that can be worked on so easily, and everything's pretty accessible. They're small cars, so if you do need to get to something more obscure, it's not too hard to move like plastic parts or pieces and all that stuff out of the way to get to it. So all in all, I would rate this car, like just based on my experience, like an 8 out of 10 as far as easiness to work on, 0 being the hardest, 10 being the easiest. Now, although some parts are hard to find, there are a lot of parts for these cars that are interchangeable, especially with the early model CRXs. You can definitely find parts off like Integras that might fit these. Actually the rear sway bar, I'll show you guys what that looks like real quick. If you haven't seen this video, I'll try and put a little card up here, but this rear sway bar back here is actually for a, I believe, a 1993 or maybe it's 96 Integra. So there are parts that are interchangeable on these cars, especially being a Honda. Now, I'm not going to bore you guys with the obvious stuff. You're buying an old car, you need to obviously check for fluid leaks, check for rust, check for rust, because I got screwed on this car. The previous owner failed to mention that if you open the trunk and lift up the carpet and lift up the wood that is kind of like the support bracket for it, I would have found a ginormous lake of water in this trunk. My suspicion is that this car sat for a long time and stuff from falling on it, leaves falling on it, basically built up and clogged all the drain holes that the car has to drain water as it lands on it, like rainwater. Over time, I think that just caused the leak in the trunk, and now I'm basically having to deal with that, deal with the rust, deal with a whole headache of stuff. So just please do your due diligence to look for rust, because that is going to be a cancer to a car this old. The more rust free you can find, the better. I picked this up down in Tennessee. I live in Massachusetts. I probably would never ever ever find a car this clean up here just because of all the salt and the New England winters. Although I complain about having the dual carb and not the fuel injected, I have to say this thing is reliable. It really, I've never felt basically unsafe with the motor. Like I felt like the motor was I never felt like the motor was making very weird noises, and it was never stuttering. It was never, the thing just feels solid. It feels like a really solid motor, which again is why I'm gonna ride this one out basically until it goes. So just something to think about if you are, you found a Prelude that fits the bill but it's not fuel injected. Just know you're getting a solid motor still. It's not as fast as the fuel injection and there's not as much you can do with it, but it's still a solid motor. And I'm repeating myself by saying solid motor, solid motor, solid motor, but you guys get the picture. All in all, I have absolutely loved owning this car. It has just been like nothing else I've ever owned, and it handles like a dream. It's so cool. I say it a lot in my videos, but it's like a time machine. I mean, you get into this thing and it just feels like you've stepped back into the 80s. And just the style of everything, it's so unique compared to what you see now. I really can't say enough about it. It's such a cool car to own. Be prepared to fall in love with your Prelude. If you pick one up, especially a 3rd gen, I can't speak for other generations, but you're gonna fall in love with it. It is so much fun to drive. People actually give me the best looks, the best like thumbs up and everything over this car, just because I would say the one thing that I hear the most is, wow, I haven't seen one of those in years. And I hear that all the time at gas stations, car washes, like just everywhere. People are so shocked to see this car, and when they see it in as good of condition as it's in, it blows their mind. So for me, that's really cool because it kind of just demonstrates the hard work I've put into building this car and making it look better than when I bought it. So that will wrap things up for today's video though. If you guys have any questions, anything that I might have missed, or any, you know, just Prelude questions that you have, you're maybe looking to buy one and want to shoot me a DM or a message or a comment down below, I always see and always read all the comments. So I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you to my Prelude subscribers. I know you guys have been putting up with some F30 videos, and honestly, that's my whole thing, is unique style, same dream. You know, we all have different styles and different appreciations for cars, but we're all under the same umbrella. We all have the same car enthusiast dream, so I hope you guys can appreciate that. But stay tuned, more stuff coming to the Prelude. I will see you guys next time. Keep elevating, and peace out.